Cool. Thanks. So yeah, just to reiterate Mark's point, we usually have a driver fitting protocol that we go through, which is a much more extensive process. Whereas we've really almost simplified it to a driver selection protocol, more or less for that person that comes into the shop and they just want to quickly grab a demo or something like that. And we want to try and get as much information out of them and make the best decision for them so they can have really the best impression of the product as soon as they get out onto the course. Obviously, that will lead to more sales, hopefully. So the first thing that we want to do is in that moment, we want to have a quick customer interview. So it's understanding, okay, what have you currently got? What kind of driver? And really relating back to, okay, what are the goals of this new driver? So if someone, for example, the example that I like to use is if someone comes in with a square driver, we know that with the square drivers, the way that they were set up, because they're nice and really stable, they're really, really forgiving. But what we lacked with that driver was because of that shape, we actually add a lot of spin, so we don't get a ton of distance. So if a guy comes in or a girl comes in and says, oh, well, you know, I'm looking to get more distance. I feel like, you know, I'm just not getting as much out of it as I should. It's really forgiving, but I'm really looking for distance. Then obviously their goal of this new driver is we're trying to get some more distance. So it's really, really important to understand that, because there's no point giving someone an even more forgiving driver when they're really simply asking for more distance. So from that point, understanding, okay, well, what is going to give us more distance? We're going to go through a little bit of that in a moment, but for the most part, also understanding what their current loft and shaft flex is. That is just a general rule. So we can be like, okay, we sort of know what's going on here. Then that really helps with obviously shot shape. So are they fading it? Are they hooking it? Is it going dead straight frozen rope? I don't think if it was dead straight frozen rope, they'll be coming to see you, but we're trying to understand. They might want to turn that frozen rope into that little draw, or they want to hit a little fade. It's also really important to understand the goal for that shot shape, because, you know, again, it's like the distance forgiveness thing. You don't want to be giving someone a draw bias driver that hates seeing the ball go left, because that's really what the club's acting to do. It's trying to turn that ball over right to left, and that's going to create more of a hook. So again, really, really important that we're understanding what it is that that customer wants from their driver. And then moving on to trajectory, obviously very, very subjective thing. So a lot of people tend to think that they will hit it higher than they actually do. So obviously taking into account when we come back to this current loft shaft flex idea, you know, if they've got a 12-degree driver and they say, oh, this ball moons, you probably believe them. So you might go down in loft, or the contrary, you got the odd person that comes in with a 9-degree driver and says, I feel like it doesn't get off the ground, then we're going to add some loft, right? So again, it's really important understanding, you know, the person's basically going to spell out to you what's wrong with their current driver and where they really need to go. And then that's when we'll start, you know, looking into, okay, well, what head am I going to give that person? Our general starting point, so this is a recommendation if the person comes in and they've got absolutely no idea, they're not giving you much information, then we're going to start with that Epic Max with a 10.5-degree head, and we'll try and match that current shaft flex. If they have a driver that's so old that the actual writing's scratched off the shaft, you can probably just ask them roughly how far do you think you hit driver. And then you can get a rough estimate from there, like, oh, maybe if you're hitting it 200 meters, you might be in that regular stiff flex, but it's not really something that we get too caught up on. It's not going to have too much of an effect. So going to have a little bit of a discussion about what the different heads do so that we can be more informed when we're making that decision. And again, getting to that result much quicker than if we didn't have too much information about what the head's doing and then what the customer's doing. So our first is the Epic Speed. So this driver has been really interesting for us this year. It's moved more into a niche kind of area. Previous to that was the standard Maverick, and that fit a lot greater of the population. But this one, it's moving more into the niche kind of thing because we've got other models surrounding it. So the Epic Speed, we found obviously a little bit smaller of a profile. So it's built for just premium speed. So we've got that cyclone arrow shape on it, which reduces the lag, which increases our club head speed, which therefore on a consistent center strike, we'll see more ball speed. So it's been really, really fast, but it struggles a little bit on those off-center impacts. So what we usually put this into is that golfer that was quite a good golfer, and he or she is just starting to lose a lot of speed. But they're really, really good at striking the middle of the face. So we can get that benefit of that extra speed without losing a little bit of stability. So another thing to take into account also is this driver has a slight bit of draw bias in it, and we'll have a look at the bias map in a moment. But moving on, Epic Max, this has been probably our most successful driver so far this year. So we're about 9 months into it, which is usually a pretty good indication of where things are going. Big profile. We've obviously got adjustability like you wouldn't believe. We've got the PDW in the back. We've got OptiFit cog. We've got lots of different things that are going on in order to make the driver fit basically the person. Bigger head, so it's going to be more stable. So on those off-center strikes, club's not going to twist as much. We're going to see a tighter dispersion, which is really, really important. Understanding that the players, if they can give you, do you generally hit it in the middle of the face or do you hit it all over the face? Is obviously really important. And they can gain a lot. If they typically hit the ball all over the face and they're not really super consistent, we're going to see a big improvement using this Epic Max. And then the last thing is, it is draw bias. So it is going to want to work the ball right to left. It's really good for those people that are struggling with the left to right, so the big fades. With that PDW at the back, we can make it super draw bias, which really helps straighten out ball flight that really starts way off to the left and then cuts back into the fairway. Also allows for more of a square face, less spin, backspin left to right, and obviously more distance. So it's really good. Moving on to the Epic Max LS, we kind of were surprised by this driver. Generally speaking, we see that the LS drivers, our Sub-Zeros before, obviously been that really niche product for that probably 5-10% of golfers that swing it fast enough to spin it enough to want to knock the spin out, right? But with this Max LS, with that bigger head, so this has got an ultra high MOI, so it's a bit bigger of a footprint. And what that's kind of allowed is maybe that center of gravity just to shift back a little bit from the Sub-Zeros, so it's not spinning as low as what we'd seen from, say, the Maverick Sub-Zero, which was super low. So we're actually able to fit a lot more people, particularly in that 10.5 degree head that you're looking at just there. A lot more people can get away with that Max LS. It's going to knock the spin out, get a nice high launch, low spin characteristic, which if they're looking for distance specifically, that's where we'll kind of look. And then also we're adding that extra bit of stability by the bigger head. So it's been a really good driver for us, been the really surprise product from us. And then also the good thing about it is if you got that left miss, we can shift the PDW into the toe and make it fade bias. Whereas this driver holistically, when we've got that PDW in the center, is a neutral driver. So this is the only one that we really offer that's neutral. To go into that again, I said I'd give us a little indication of where all these drivers sit on this little continuum graph. So Epic Max, we're going to see, put that PDW in the heel. Sorry, we're going to get a lot of draw bias. We put it in the center, it's going to be semi-draw. And then if we put it in the toe, we're going to see a neutral bias. So really good things to have in your mind there. Like the driver doesn't have to, whilst it is draw bias, we can make it neutral. So a really good thing to have in your head. If that person's looking for more stability but misses it left, we can potentially make it a little bit more neutral, which might help them a little bit. Epic Speed, got that little bit of draw bias, which again, if that person's missing at left, not the best idea. We'd probably be more or less pointing them into the Epic Max LS, where you can see here, you can put it into a fade if you put it in a toe in the PDW, or you can make it semi-draw if you put it into the heel. So really, really important to understand what's going on with the CGs and the biases in these drivers in order to, get to that decision of, okay, I'm going to give this person this driver. They're going to go out on the course. They're going to have the best experience because I know that it does this, this, and this. And then therefore they're going to be happy. And then hopefully they'll buy the driver or come back and say, I just want to tune it up a little bit. And you can go out there with them on the range for about 10, 15 minutes and just dial the thing in. And then you've got a sale. So really, really important. When we talk about fine tuning shaft, you'll see here the language that we use is very, very broad and vague. Again, these are really just guidelines. You might find that they don't always come to fruition. So for example, a lighter weight may produce more clubhead speed for more distance, which is not necessarily the case. We can sometimes see people with heavier shafts, they'll swing them faster, they'll get more ball speed, and it'll go further. So not hard and fast rules by any way, in any way, shape or form. Same with a heavier weight may produce more consistency. Sometimes we give them heavier weights, they'll lack consistency because the club's a lot heavier. They might start to get a little bit tired by the end of the round or halfway through the round because that club's just a little bit heavier. So these are just areas we can kind of go into if we're saying, okay, why don't we just try and see if we can get a little bit more clubhead speed out of the person? Why don't we try a lighter shaft? That's kind of what we're saying, but don't think these are be all end all rules that we really need to go through. So similar with length, it may produce more consistency for tighter dispersion, can be the case. Although we know that, sometimes when we get a little bit shorter of a club, the strike starts to move towards the toe. And obviously that's not going to lead to too much consistency because the club's going to start gearing and we're going to start seeing the ball go left, 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 left. And then the person starts fighting it. So again, another area we can go into, but don't think that it's the be all end all. Like this is going to happen because I've given them a short shaft. Longer shaft may produce more clubhead speed for more distance. Yes, again, we can dabble into that. We don't tend to dabble into that. Drive is pretty long at the moment. So I know from my personal experience, I swing a 45.5-inch driver as fast as a 48-inch driver. So I actually don't gain anything from going longer. There's a lot of players on tour as well that have found the same thing. So it's, again, very, very much player and swing dependent. It may happen, it might not. If it happens, great. You'll be glad that you went there, but it's not necessarily the case all the time. My personal favorite and thing to really talk about if I've got time with the client is to talk about feel. So does it feel soft? Does it feel stiff? Does it feel good? Does it feel, what are you feeling? Does it feel stiff in a certain section? Getting that information and relaying it, being like, trying to find something for them that feels great, because if it feels great, they're going to be super, super confident with it. And that's going to lead to probably better consistency with the driver. And that's what we're really looking for. We're really looking to make sure that we've got that head right. So we've got the right ball flight, and then we're complementing it with the shaft by giving them something that feels great. That's really where we're at when it comes to fitting golf clubs. So just to move on a little bit, looking at fitting trends for driver, talking about shaft and feel just then. If you're looking at the Hazardous IM10 and then the Even Flow Riptide, what's really the difference? Difference I've kind of found is, Even Flow Riptide is probably a little bit softer of a feel, more for that person that is really cruises at it, slow, rhythmical swing, versus Hazardous IM10. We've been having a little bit more success with those more aggressive hitters. So more or less that person that comes way out of the top and just wrenching on a golf club, we might put them into a Hazardous IM10 because it's just going to be that, it's just going to be able to hold up that little bit more with that extra pressure. So moving on to the OptiFit cog, really important that we understand what happens when we're shifting lofts particularly. So when we add loft on that cog. So we go +1, +2, we're shutting the face. And then when we're taking loft away, so we're going to -1, we're opening the face. So that can either help or hinder. So if you got that person that, you know, wants to get rid of that left ball, we can go up in loft and then take some off on the OptiFig cog, and we can get more of a better way that the club's now presenting for them. So it's going to get rid of that left miss. Or on the contrary, what we do a lot of is we take a 9-degree driver, put 9-degree Epic Max, put the weight in the heel, add 2 degrees of loft, and then that shuts the face. So we've got this thing that's just doing all that it possibly can to stop that big fade left to right. Already touched on Max LS and the Epic Speed in terms of how they're exceeding expectations in the Max LS. We're going to see a lot more people fitting into that because it is not that super low spinning driver. So I really recommend dabbling into that a little bit. And then Epic Speed, usually we're seeing like a nice little niche product for that older mid to low handicapper that's a really good ball striker that's just looking for out and out speed. So that kind of caps off drivers.